Part of the world. John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the UN and a Fox News contributor, joins us now. So let's bring our top stories together, because Benjamin Netanyahu mentioned ISIS in his talk about Hamas and said what we're seeing from Hamas is a pattern repeated by terrorist groups all over the world: land grabs and murders. What stops it?
Well, I think the only thing that is going to stop this growth of terrorism as states deteriorate all over the Middle East is an American involvement with a coalition of others who understand that the terrorist threat, the threat of extremist Islam, remains and is growing. And our policy the past several months has been passivity in the face of ISIS in Iraq and a whole series of other crises that we see developing too.
The man that followed you at the UN penned an editorial in the Washington Post today and said there's an urgent need in Iraq right now for aid, for our money, taxpayer money, to go to Iraq and prop up the right people to fight ISIS. What do you think about that?
Well, I largely agree with it. I think we should be aiding the Kurds in Iraq in their struggle against ISIS. I think we should be aiding the Sunni population of Iraq that ISIS is taking advantage of, but to help them against ISIS. I'm less interested in helping the al-Maliki government in Baghdad. I'm not sure how long al-Maliki is going to stay in power. Iran itself is looking for a successor. That's not good news. But let's be clear. ISIS is a terrorist threat. It is a real threat, and for weeks now we have essentially done nothing.
And some are saying it controls more territory and more resources than any terrorist group in the history of terror groups. And I want to ask you about how what we do in Iraq sends a ripple effect or a message to the rest of the world. And let me just mention what's happening in Russia, because Russia is really taking tensions over Ukraine up a notch. Watch this. President Vladimir Putin sending more troops to the border, ordering retaliatory sanctions against the West, and you have NATO saying they want to send more forces to retaliate if needed. So again, let's take a big picture look at this. How we handle Iraq, how we handle these particular situations, what sort of message do they send to places like Russia?
Well, I think it sends a message that the United States is uninterested and disengaged. Whatever minimal order and stability there is in the world, and there's not much, is because of the United States and its structure of alliances, our projection of our influence. And over the past several years, the fact is we have withdrawn, turned inward, we've reduced our influence, and what's happening is that chaos is spreading bit by bit by bit. And you're absolutely right. The Russians watch what we're not doing in the Middle East. The Chinese watch what we're not doing in Ukraine, and I think a pattern is forming.
Let me ask you a simple final question. How do you choose, though, with everything that's happening in the world, how do you choose which is at the top of the priority list to send that message to everybody else out there that the United States is involved and is watching?
Well, there's a long list of priorities, but I think the main threat that we face today is the threat of nuclear proliferation, and it comes from Iran, the same country that arms and finances Hamas and Hezbollah, that backs the al-Maliki regime in Iraq, the Assad regime in Syria, and we're doing next to nothing except negotiating with Iran, hoping that they will voluntarily renounce their nuclear weapons program, which is a charade.
Interesting that you mention it, because here we are doing all these top headlines and you don't see Iran in it at all. So it's nice to have your perspective and a little context for what's happening, Ambassador. Thank you very much.
Thank you.